night will I rise to give thanks unto thee because of thy righteous judgments, O Lord. I am a companion of all them that fear thee, and of them that keep thy precepts. The earth, O Lord, is full of thy mercy. Teach me thy statutes. Thou hast dealt well with thy servants, O Lord, according to thy... Good morning, welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. My name is Paul Strangini, and we are continuing in Luke chapter 16, or 6, verse 27. And it's Luke's somewhat abbreviated version of the Sermon on the Mount. And in this part, he begins, "But I say unto you which hear, love your enemies, do good to them which hate you, bless them that curse you, and pray for them which despitefully use you. And unto him that smiteth thee on one cheek, offer also the other. And him that taketh away thy cloak, forbid not to take thy coat also. Give to every man that asketh of thee, and of him that taketh away thy goods, ask them not again. And as ye would that men should do unto you, do ye also unto them likewise. For if ye love them which love you, what thank have ye? For sinners also love those that love them. And if you do good to them which do good to you, what thank have you? For sinners also do the same. And if you lend to them of whom you hope to receive, what thank have ye? For sinners also lend to sinners, and receive as much again. But love your enemies, and do good, and lend, hoping for nothing again, and your reward shall be great, and ye shall be the children of the highest. For he is kind to the unthankful and to the evil. Be ye therefore merciful as your Father also is merciful." And we'll consider it. That's a good section. Well, it's all connected. And the idea is this, it's pretty straightforward, but on the other hand, there's a lot of ways to go astray with this. For one, Jesus meant it to be your philosophy, and it to be something that is perhaps unexpected to your enemies. It's sort of like when he says forgive, right? There's a parable where it says forgive. And we should forgive. We should forgive people. But things that are not covered in the New Testament are things like when people will be like, well, you have to forgive me. You're a Christian. And they expect it in spite of their lack of repentance. And certainly here's the thing, is like, even if you are not going to go as far as to say it's nothing, you certainly under no circumstances should bear a grudge. Let me see how far behind I went. That's not too bad. We shouldn't bear grudges. We shouldn't revenge ourselves. That's for sure. Now, in the specifics of this, there's definitely a portion of, there's definitely a degree to which, I think a lot of commentators will kind of walk a lot of this back. And it was certainly not given to be taken, I think, in the most wooden literal sense. But I want to give it in the sense that I think that he meant it, which is like, I don't know, maybe people, this is not meant to be, like, you give to somebody, or you ever had someone give to you, let's say, a family member, and you're thankful for something, and you're like, and you want to pay them back, and they're like, no, Not for you, friend, loved one. No, I don't expect a dime back from you. You know what I mean? Like, you say, oh, take this. Here, have this, have that. Family member, loved one. Take. I want to give you this. Here. Oh, you need a coat? Here, have this too. You know what I'm saying? Those are the things you do to people you love. You know what I'm saying? You need to borrow some money. How much money do you need? $1,000? Sure. Pay, and then they come back. Look, I know I haven't paid you back yet. But, never mind. You don't ever have to pay me back. Loved one, family member. That's how people love family members. I mean, that's what he's describing. You lend, hoping to receive nothing. Lend, take it. That's the attitude. I mean, human beings do this all the time. It's not what Jesus proposes is only unusual in that he says, do it to your enemies. Because people do this all the time with loved ones, family members. It's not meant to do, like I said, it's not meant to be an occasion for people to go like, hey, you're a Christian, give me everything you've got, It's not necessarily about robbery, it's about, meeting people's needs, being kind, loving people who are not your friends or family, and being kind to people who go beyond people for whom it is natural for you. I mean, I remember, I did something kind for a family member once, and, they thought it was this huge deal because a lot of people in the family were not as kind. Sometimes families are less kind than that. I mean, maybe for some people, what I just described as something people do in families is like far out, like crazy talk. Maybe they're not like that. I don't know. I've had people be like that to me, and I've been like that with other people. So I know that while not like universal, it is certainly not uncommon among family members to be generous and more than fair. You know what I mean? Like to go beyond just, like an exchange of, one-to-one. Like, okay, I'll borrow and I'll receive again, and I'll give and expect to receive. And all that. And it's like sometimes some family members are definitely like that. I mean, I have a number of family members that are definitely not very, there's always like some string dangling from everything. And, and then there's also people, I mean, they might feel like they're constantly being taken advantage of. That's another, like, for one, certainly as a Christian, you shouldn't test other Christians with this and try to be, to take advantage of their generosity. Ask, I ask. I prefer not to ask any help from anybody. It's just, I always wanted to be able to take care of things myself. But sometimes people get into extremities and they need help. All right, I didn't go back to the first verse. Let's see. Love your enemies, do good to them which hate you. It's the enemies that need your goodness. Or, it's not like, oh, don't do good to the people you love, do good to the people who hate you. What it's saying is it's much more if you behave the same universally. And that's how I take this. It's like, look at what he's saying, and he clearly goes on to say, if you do good to them which do good to you, if you love those that love you, that's not. And so what he's saying is, he's not saying do something extraordinary. He's saying just do what you do to people who you love. When you love people, you bless them, right? You pray for them. I'll pray for my family member. It's not as intuitive to be like, oh, this guy hates my guts. but I see he's in trouble, so I'll go to God on his behalf. You're more likely to be like, good. I want to see you suffer. I mean, that's human nature. When we do things consistent with human nature, it's not impressive. Pray for them which despitefully use you. That kind of goes up against what I was saying, doesn't it? I still think that on some level, it is a principle for treat people who don't love you, like people who you love. That's clear, and that's pretty absolute. It's like that's what we ought to do. Those who despitefully use you, pray for them. I would say you'd always pray for anybody. It doesn't cost you anything, except maybe makes you think of them as human beings and instead of as just the enemy, as personifications of Satan. To him that smites you on the one cheek, offer also the other. I've always taken this as a little metaphorical, meaning a slap on the cheek is an insult. It is not. If someone tries to punch you in the face, I'm not saying you necessarily need to, throw down. And, all right, here we go. In fact, you should probably just get away. You should avoid conflict. And look at Jesus. People wanted to hurt him and throw him around and toss him off cliffs and stuff, and his usual response was not to call down fire from heaven, but rather to just slip away. If by all means you can avoid conflict, do. They're difficult ones for me, because, it's difficult for me. Because I really want to punch my enemies in the face. That's my nature. That's why I know it's like, that's something that, God, calls me to be more than just a man, but to put on the divine nature and God's divine patience and God's divine outlook as far as the judgment is coming. And as much as there's parts of me, I don't want to see my enemies turn into my brothers. I don't want to see that. I want to see my enemies get what they deserve. That's how men feel. And I'm a man, I know. I want to see my enemies get what they deserve. But rather, I should hope that my enemies would be turned into my friends and have the outlook, a more divine outlook on things. And that's something I know I personally need more of, because it's for me, it's very, I don't know. Well, if the Lord wasn't asking for it, it wouldn't, it is a measure. It's easier to talk about too, honestly. It's there are other things that are harder to talk about. As I discovered when I first got the Holy Spirit, you go to church and try talking about masturbation, boy, and people are not going to like you. You know what I mean? Because one, most of them are doing it, and they don't like the idea of someone starting a trend of people confessing that sin. They don't want that going on, because it is embarrassing and humiliating to admit to doing those things, right? People are ashamed. Even the heathen. They don't. It's very few. It's a special brand of perverse person who wants to be seen humiliating themselves like that. Most people feel humiliated by being seen doing base things. That's why no one likes to be seen going to the bathroom or doing any sort of base thing, right? But because it's macho and stuff, I suppose it's easier to talk about things like that. It's I don't feel as much discomfort, though I feel the discomfort of the judgment of God, knowing that my heart is not 100% right in all that. I know what is right. I just know how I feel. You know what I mean? And if I feel it, it's probably common to other people to feel the same way. It's it's not so easy to swallow the idea that we should genuinely do good to them. You can comfort yourself with verses like, for in so doing you shall heap coals of fire on his head. But even so, that heaping of coals of fire may lead them to repentance. And now you have to accept and love as a brother he who was once your enemy. And sometimes that works out. Sometimes people, like if someone changes political parties, people on the other side are delighted to welcome them, because it's a testimony. There's something being said when someone just drops their old positions and just wholesale comes over to the other side. And it makes people happy. But there are some kinds of offenses and enemies with whom the conflict is so bitter that it becomes difficult, like you don't want to accept them. And that is something to overcome. That's something to be prayerful about. These verses still hit me as very hard. If they don't hit you, then you've come a lot farther. If they don't hit you, it's like, loving my, people do rotten things to me, and my first impulse is just kindness. If you're there, then good for you. And you can pray for me and other people. And I'm not trying to be mocking of that. It's like, I'm sure there are people who are much kinder, for whom this is less difficult. All right. If you do good to them which do good to you, what thank have ye? For sinners also do the same. We've kind of talked about this already. It's like, it's not, it is natural to do good to them which are good to you. And all Jesus is saying is, well, then apply that to your enemies. Just do good. The same thing you do. Because here's the thing. On some level, the people who do good to you are not really that much. Are they really so deserving? Yeah, I mean, like I know that I've had good done to me by people who loved me, who I loved, but the good done to me was out of measure of what I deserved. I mean, I didn't deserve that much goodness, but I got it anyways. And it goes down to even the idea of salvation. It's what makes some people uncomfortable with the idea of election, because they have to face the thought that God has been more kind to them than to other people, perhaps. And that there's been more grace shown them, that they could believe and they could receive the truth. And that knowledge is a bit of a burden, on some level, because, like, I don't, like, if we go out and we all do a job and we're all working equally, like digging a ditch, we all move exactly the same amount of dirt, And the guy paying us comes along and pays me double what he paid everybody else. And we say, what's is this a mistake? It's going to make me feel, how's it going to make you feel? You did the exact, and there are no reasons of what you did, why you get double. You just get double. Why? What do you think? Does he like you? Maybe it's just a randomly selected winner, I don't really believe in randomly selected winners, but in a sense, it is, since it's God's choosing, it's subjective to Him. It's not based on my merit. And that makes me uncomfortable, because I feel like I've been singled out, and that some good thing has happened to me that hasn't happened to other people. And people, when you're more, there is a definite streak in man that gets this like sort of guilty conscience complex when they've had better luck, or they've been more blessed, or however you want to characterize it. When good fortune has befallen people, there's a tendency to feel a bit self-conscious about it, a little bit guilty about it sometimes. Too much good things happening to you makes you feel, like I have like all these children and stuff, right? And, and then when I meet someone who I know would like to have children, or didn't miss out on having a family, right? And wanted one, it makes me feel a little like I don't want to like rub my happiness in their face. I don't want to do that. And so also, having good done to you puts you in a weird position. Same thing with your enemies, though. It has the potential to do them good. It has the potential to prick their hearts. Yes, to heap coals of fire on their head. And it may just enrage them the further. And then in that sense, you have your revenge. I mean, if they don't repent by doing good to them, you've proved yourself even better a person. You know what I mean? It's one thing to just fight against someone tooth and nail, and just struggle against them and try to hurt them the way they're hurting you. But when you do not fight against them, but rather pray for them, be a blessing to them, and just allow them to be the bad guy, you do commend yourself not only to them but to other people. And say, why are they being so horrible to that really nice, kind, beautiful person? It's not as immediately satisfying. Like in the moment, it's not as satisfying. In the moment, it's more satisfying to go, yeah, up yours, and that kind of stuff. Take this. And I was talking about actually specifically the slapping of the cheek. It's an insult. I just want to mention that. I already did that, right? It's like, it's not saying like if someone hits you, if someone like throws a punch at you, you just come back and say, okay, hit me again until you're a bloody mess. If someone's trying to actually, a slap on the cheek is what the smiting on the cheek means. It was usually like that often. I don't know if it's in Jesus' time, but as you may have remembered from seeing, old movies or TV shows or cartoons, where they do they take the gloves and they slap someone on a cheek, and it's meant to be an insult. It's the prelude to a duel. I slap you on one cheek, and now, what are you gonna do? You just gonna take it, huh? You gonna take it, wimp? What are you gonna do? What are you going to do about it? Huh? Taunting. Provoking. Yeah. Slap you in the face. Look how vulnerable and weak you are. I can just slap you. I can do whatever I want. And they say, or I snatch your cloak. Haha. I've got it. And I say, here, take my coat too, if that's the kind of jackass you're going to be, So insults, but if someone's actually trying to do you violence, don't get hurt. Get away. Avoid the situation. I don't think it's wrong in the extremity of violence to defend yourself. And I would say contextualize it, especially if it's not, if I don't want to die for any reason other than for the name of Christ. If someone's going to smite me on my face because of Christ, I will gladly take as many as they care to give me. If someone's going to, I want to be that kind of person anyways, right? I want to be that level of committed to Christ, to suffer and even die for his name's sake. That I at least intellectually assent to, right? I don't know how I would actually deal with the situation because I've never been in that situation, but I do know that intellectually that is something I think I ought to be able to accept. But if someone's just trying to rob you, one, a lot of times just give them what they want. That's the easiest way to get out of the situation. If someone just wants to beat you and kill you for no reason, and a lot of times that comes up because of resistance. A lot of times if you toss them your wallet and run away, that's it. That's the end of the thing. Like, let them go. It's when someone's trying to have fun with you, for no reason, because to fulfill their violent pleasures. Get away. And if in extremity, if you're cornered, fight back. I would. I wouldn't don't necessarily kill them. When you're done beating them, show them love, tend their wounds. I could see how you could come. It's like, hey, if it's all about fighting for fun, well, I know about that. I fight for fun all the time. So, if you're just looking to beat someone up for fun, I can give you a challenge. If that's what we want. If it's fun's the goal, we can have some fun. Let's see who can put who to sleep. As you would have mentioned to you, do you also to them likewise. Treat people the way you'd like to be treated. It's the golden rule. It's a different formulation of it. Essentially the same thing, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But a very simple axiom that is easy to remember, easy to, agree with, but not so easy to implement. Because people just are not, me is me and you is you. It's like, sure, I'd like someone to be generous with me. Like if I was in need, I want someone to anticipate my need and give to me before I even had to ask. But like being like that with other people, not so easy. I don't know, I'm not sure. I don't have a lot of means. I have a lot of children, so, there my money goes. So I don't have like a lot of means where I would be like burdened with the thought of like, what do I do with all these riches? And for me, that's just any money in excess. I know a lot of people say, I'm not rich. I've just got my, millions of dollars in investments. I've got my hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings. But other than that, I'm broke. That's all laid up for later. That's all for my, I've only got my exclusive memberships and my plane trips and my vacations. That's all tied up. That's money gone out the window already. Other than that, I'm flat broke. Week to week, I got no money. Just got barely enough to pay the bills. Everything else is going into the investments or into the, into savings, into the vacations, and then what's left over for me, hardly anything. That's literally the attitude of a lot of people. It's like and that, honestly, in the world and the wisdom of the world, that's how you are, like if you want to have money, that's how you are. It's your thought process. You are very, the thing I've noticed about rich people is they count every penny. They're aware of every penny. They're very careful about money. And that, I mean that metaphorically. Or, counting every penny, is a metaphor for just being very exact about their money, not being, not throwing it around. That's what it takes to get rich. You got to hold on to the dollars. What thank have you? Or as he says in Matthew, what reward? How are you going to be commended for doing what is pretty natural? The world is perverse in that, people do good. I know someone who, they divorced their husband, and they said, well, they were asked, well, don't you didn't he provide for you all those years, and you never had to work, and you were able to raise the kids and do this and that? And it's like, well, it was just, all that he provided for you. Is there any thankfulness for it? Like that was just what they were. That was just what they were expected to do. And this person had no thankfulness for all that. Does that mean we shouldn't be thankful? No, you should be thankful for loving family members, because not all are. There are people who are not thankful. Some people are impressed. It isn't that impressive when you're kind to your family members. It is sort of expected. But it's not, there are people who are against nature, who do things against nature and who despise even their own kin. That's a depth of wickedness. What thank have you? Well, what thank? Yeah, you get no thanks apparently in some cases. What it's saying is that's sinners love them which love them. What he's talking about is he means from God. It means how does God? I wonder what the word thank here is. It's an interesting choice, right? Let's see. Oops. Wow, super big. I'm just curious what the word thank is. Love your enemies. Thank of you. Here we go. Yeah. The word thank is charis, which is the same word we use for grace. Same root anyways, right? Grace, gift, blessing, favor. It can mean gratitude. Or it could be in a sense of like, what kindness is this? Are you truly kind? Are you saying you're not being, it's not very gracious to just do good to those, to do what is expected of you. They should appreciate it, by the way, if there was any question. Family members should appreciate the love they are shown, because it is not always so. But it is what is expected. It's not you're not going beyond what should reasonably be expected of a normal human being when you love your family members. A lot of families are dysfunctional, and it's not so, right? People and the husbands hate their wives hate their husbands, children hate their parents hate their children. It's very common, but nevertheless, it's not unreasonable to imagine that in a generally healthy home of someone who is godly minded, that there's going to be love within the family at least. And people have tried to praise me for loving my children and stuff. I'm like, I don't know that I even did them any good, on some level. That's just me questioning everything, but that's how I feel sometimes. It's like, what have I really done for anyone? Sinners also do good to those. Sinners also love those who love them. You can be, what he's saying is, look, I'm a sinner. And that's true. Just because I'm a sinful man doesn't mean I'm just like dyed in the wool through and through evil. There are plenty of sinners of all different stripes who love their children. That's why it's always like, I've heard it on the news, it's like, oh, but they love their family. It's like, that's what most people do. Most people do. There are families where they don't, but most do on some level, or at least they'll say they do because they think they ought to. If you love them which love you, if you do good to them which do good to you, even more so, I repay kindness. Some people don't repay kindness properly. They repay kindness with evil. That's really bad. That's a real horrible behavior. But even most sinners, unbelievers, are going to fulfill doing good to those which are good to them. They're going to love them which love them. I mean, they're not that horrible. That's really horrible. But most run-of-the-mill garden variety sinners, they love them which love them, and they're good to them which are good to them. Good to those that are good to them is how I should have said that. It'll be a little less confusing. What thank have you? What charis? What gracious is? What grace or kindness is there in that? I prefer that translation. Is like saying, what kindness do you have in you? What kindness do you have? What mercy do you have in doing this? There's no mercy at all. Now, when you think about what thank have you, you ought to have thanks, and gratitude. There's normal, for people to be grateful for people who love them, because you might have nobody who loves you. So I do think the word thank is not really a good translation of charis in this case. And like I said, it is often translated grace. It is the word which is, when we talk about grace, we're talking charis. And we talk about gift, we talk about charisma. What we call charisma, but charisma means something else in English. Charis means kindness, grace, mercy. There's no particular mercy, kindness, or graciousness in being good to those that are good to you. Zero. Now that I can say, what thank have you? What grace have you? What charities have you in doing this? Zero. It's not gracious. It's just what is natural and normal, expected. What people ought to do is love those which love them. It's not particularly gracious. It's just what should be. You know, honor your father and your mother. Parents should take care of their children. People who do good to you, you ought to do good back to them. When you don't, it's particularly odious. And not just among the godly, but among the ungodly. When they see someone do something nice to someone, they expect to see the other person receive it well. That's also to your advantage when you do good to those that hate you. Because in a sense, now you're repaying evil with good. And people are going to look at that and expect, well, what they ought to do is repay good back to you. And if they don't, then they are particularly odious. But if you do evil to those who do evil to you, people are going to say, well, that's how it ought to be. That's how the heathen are. Yeah, I mean, that's how it ought to be. Revenge those who take revenge on you. Those who slap you, slap them back. You know, and when you lend to people, you know, when you give to people who are reliable. Yeah, I've lent to whatever. I don't. On some, I'll say this. I excuse myself on some level. When I was young, I lent to people foolishly following this. Not foolishly following it, but I knew it was a bad idea. I knew I wasn't going to see any money from them. And I did it. I felt like they were taking advantage of me. You know, I haven't had many times where people asked of me in the present time because people look at me and they know he has all these, you know, I don't have to deal with this much because people are like, he's up to his eyeballs in it. And that's true. It's like loan. It's like if I had money to loan, then we'd talk about it. But it's like I'd be taking food out of my children's mouths. I mean, I can't do that. So, you know, you loan of what you have in excess of what it takes to live. I can't give a loan of money I don't have. I'm like, you want me to come help you? You know, I can give some time probably. I got some time to spare. Not really, honestly, but, you know, I will go out of my way for that sometimes. You know? I mean, it's like, it depends on what the current schedule is like, right? But when you have excess, you have this burden come on you like, well, what if someone needs help? And then you lose the money. Well, then you lose the money. You know? I don't want to, you know, like I said, I'm not bragging. It was like once, like ages ago. That's funny. I'm going to tell my wife about this. I'm like, do you remember that time? Yeah, I remember. I want to talk about that. And, you know, where I helped someone, it wasn't like a lot of money. It was like $100 or something, maybe 200, and I drove a guy someplace, you know. And he swore he'd pay me back. Never did. Never heard from him again. Big deal. I've gotten ripped off worse by stores and stuff. That, you know, there you go. When the big box store rips me off, I have no Christian sentiment. Do I have to? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's almost like, it's not like, it's one thing when a man does something to you, but when a machine does it to you, I admit, I feel resentful when I feel like I'm being ground up in the gears of a machine, like a bank or a retail chain or something like that, and I feel like I've been done wrong. It's easy for me to forgive people, but corporations, despite the law, are not people. Despite being considered legally a person, they are not really a person. So I don't know. It's the problem certainly comes when you start identifying people, you know, like people who, like when something bad happens to you in a retail establishment, right? And it's like the rules or something, so nobody is really responsible for it. Don't take it out on the workers, you know. It's not their fault. And because in that case you are, if a worker makes a mistake and it hurts you, now you have someone on which to practice your kindness. And be kind for their mistakes. Be kind to them for their, you know, errors. That's what you ought to do. I don't find that difficult. Most errors are made. They're errors. When people intentionally try to rip you off, I don't know. Then you got a weird thing. It's like, well, hey, their boss might want to know that they have an employee that's ripping them off or that's ripping people off in their store. And so, who do I need to love? The boss? The employee? Who? Well, who's the bad guy? It's like, well, the employee's kind of the bad guy. Or maybe not. I don't know. So there are complicated situations in which, like I said, you get into things that's like, well, you got to play the interest of one party against another. And that's where these things become difficult. That's what the Holy Spirit, you have to listen to the leading of the Holy Spirit at some point to know, and make sure you're really listening. Like I said, like, who is the good guy? Who is the person who deserves the kindness? Because it's like, yeah, you could say like, well, what about the enemy? He deserves kindness more because it's more gracious. But on the other hand, I'm now helping someone hurt someone else. That may not be such a thing I want to be part of. I don't want to help the wicked do harm to others. You know what I mean? Like, I don't, like if someone comes to me and says, for example, someone says, I want to borrow $100 so I can go buy a gun and shoot somebody. Obviously, you say no there. You say no to that, right? You don't say, oh yeah, absolutely, give to him that asketh you. So again, in all these things, where this is not the law of Moses, this is the law of Christ. So it needs to be done in the spirit in which it was said, which is what? Do good. Do things that are gracious and kind to people who don't deserve it. But at the same time, don't do harm to people who don't deserve harm while you're trying to do good to people who may be a little sketchy, right? You're trying to do kindness to some people who are not particularly worthy of it and maybe a bit questionable in their character. That's fine, but be careful that you do not assist them in harming others. You want to avoid that. If you don't know, you don't know. You can't hold yourself guilty for that which you don't know. But you should not, if you can at all inform yourself and not be ignorant, then do that also. Meaning, don't let ignorant be a cloak for carelessness. Try to be as informed about every situation as you can before you give your goods or money to someone. You know what I mean? Things like giving someone a cloak or a coat, who's cold, enemy or not, should be an easy one. Should be an easy one. If you lend to those of whom you hope to receive, again, it's not very gracious. Sinners lend to sinners and expect to receive as much again. That's the point of lending, right? You want to get your money back. And like I said, I've lended money to family, and to a guy I thought was kind of a loser who ended up not paying me back. That was a long, long time ago. I haven't done it much since. But like I said, nobody asked me, so it's easy. I didn't much like losing the money I didn't mind the family member. I felt great helping them out, And like I said, I don't think that shouldn't be a brag. That's something that anyone ought to do. Be willing to help a family member. When I saw him in his distress, it didn't seem like a big deal. It just seemed like the thing to do. I remember people who knew about it, making a big deal. I'm like, seriously, it's whatever. It's like, it's like, and them also wanting to hold themselves to like paying back as they'd promised. It was very easy to just say, forget about it. I thought it was easy, so it's not impressive. It's not meant to be a brag. But like, what if that had been someone who I saw my enemy, right? Or someone who hates me. Something bad happens to them, some disappointment, like they have like someone loaned them some money, right? To get some equipment for their business, and then they say, oh, I need the money back And if you can't pay me, I need the equipment. I'll sell it and get the money. And you see them just breaking down. And it's like Jesus said, the vengeance of the Lord is sweet. You know, that's how people generally want to feel. They want to just like watch, just see them suffer. You know, it's like, it's like you have it coming. You've been cruel and mean and unkind. You know, and that is how people are. They take joy in others' misfortune. But we ought not to be so. What would it take to step in that situation and say, like, I'll lend you the money so you can get your business back? They may say, and then they may say, I don't want to owe you money. I'd rather lose my business. I say, then take the money. You don't owe me. There. You know, it's just what I believe in. It's what my Lord commanded. Give to them that despitefully hate you. Okay, you hate me. I'm gonna give to you. I don't know if you go into it like that. Like, give to those that are despiteful, cruel sons of profane persons. And you know. I don't know if you want to lay it on. Never lay it on thick. It's not. It doesn't become you, Christian. You're a Christian. That does not become you. Right? Don't lay it on thick like that. Just see what. Maybe they'll say like, no. Even worse. Not only do I not want to owe you, I'm not going to take gifts from you. Thanks. And then you don't even end up having to loan them anymore. But how many of us would dare risk it? You know. How much would we dare risking offering to them something like that? To someone who hates us. I don't know. It's like I've never had to confront that situation. If I could say I did that, then I'd be bragging, telling you the story. That would be a brag. I don't know if I could. I couldn't tell you the story then because it would ruin it. It didn't happen. I swear that never happened. I'm not like being falsely modest. It never happened to me. But that would be something worth bragging about and therefore worth shutting up about, keeping secret. That would be something you would have reward in heaven for. Because God is, again, merciful. Right? Lend, hoping to gain nothing again, and your reward shall be great. You should be the children of the highest. He is kind to the unthankful and to the evil. There's something I say, it's like God is kind to the unthankful and to the evil. He is merciful. You know, I did a study on the love of God, and I explained it's like God loves everybody. Not the same, but he is kind and generous to all. That is how God sees himself. You know, people don't get what they want out of life. Or they're jealous of other people's lives and say, God's kind to all. Look at that guy. That guy was born rich. And he's got all this money he never even earned, right? And he's got this lavish lifestyle. And there's, he gets all the girls. He's got cars, and he never lifted a finger to earn it. And it's like, and you tell me God's kind to everybody? That's how God sees it. Because God looks at the world from a different baseline. And the baseline is that you don't deserve anything. People always want to compare themselves to other people. Just like I said in the beginning when I said, like, I don't like being... It makes us uncomfortable, like if we're singled out for blessing or for salvation. That's why a lot of people are very uncomfortable with predestination because of the implications involved. Because it implies some things about God, about his choosing. And because ultimately they might say, why would God be more kind to me than to someone else? Is it because I'm better? I'm not better. I don't want people to think I'm better or think I'm better. But it's not that at all. It's God's choosing. Why did he choose me over somebody else? Because he was just because that's what he did. It has nothing to do. But it's not because I'm special. It should be because if God chooses me, it should be because I'm special. I'm better. I'm superior in some way, and I don't think I am. Well, you're right on the second count. You're not. And God didn't choose, though it may seem that God should choose and bless us for being more or better. That's not how it goes. God just blesses us all. It's just differing amounts. And we don't like the fact that he does that. It's like on Christmas. When I prepare Christmas, I always try to give there's always this moment where I count the gifts. I want to see, do I have a roughly equal amount for each child? And then I look at the values of them and wonder about the amount. Depends on, also their relative age and all that. Because when they divide up presents, they think about, the kids look at they count them. And I don't like to have I don't want to have some little kid thinking they're the least loved by any significant margin. I mean, it's like if it's like I've got one present and the other one's got 12, how do you feel? You got one's got 6 and the other's got 5. No, it feels like, well, hey, maybe what's inside is worth more, right? People don't know how to count their blessings, though. Unlike presents, they don't come wrapped up in nice, neat little packages that you can look at and feel and check the weight on. We don't know what things we have are even worth. He said, "Blessed are the poor." Most people don't think of it as being a gift. Woe unto them that are rich. But we look at the rich and we say they're blessed beyond what we're blessed in. We're envious of them because of all the blessings we see that are on them, and we think, why do they have so much and I have so little? But we don't know how to count our blessings. It's like there are people with a lot more money than me who might look at my life and my family and feel very envious and say, "You're so blessed. You have 7 sons and a wife who loves you and all these things." And sure, it's like maybe you have precious, you don't have like money. I mean, I get enough money, but it goes away pretty quick. It's like you don't have like a big retirement plan or something. No retirement plan. I don't plan to retire. My retirement plan is working out to try to stay healthy even as I get older, because I'm going to still need to be active. I'm not going to be able to just sit around and deteriorate, which is not a good plan anyways. You know what I mean? As you get older, don't become less active. You want to try to, if you've been, if through your youth you were inactive, like I was very sedentary for a lot of my adult years because of the nature of my job. I wasn't completely sedentary, but sedentary enough to start having problems, physical problems, a certain amount of weight gain. Right, but as you get older, you think at some point, if you don't get in shape, it's going to be harder and harder and harder. I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to get off on that. God is kind to the unthankful, to the evil. God is good to all humanity. I've used the example of people who are, crippled in one way or the other. And say, how can you say God blesses everybody, loves everybody, when he lets some people be born so disadvantaged? Again, you missed the first part of the blessing. He lets them be born. Being born is already like you're better off than you were before you were unborn. You have something. Being given, like if God, here's a very simple analogy. If a bunch of people are standing around doing nothing, and I walk up to one of them and give them something. And you can say, well, what'd you give them, a bag of dog droppings? Because it's hard to baseline things from being. Because that's the baseline I was saying about before. It's like they have, before we're born, all we have is non-being, which has no intrinsic value. Most things aren't, and most humans don't exist, and never have, never will exist. You know, I had 8 children with one woman. It's like we could have had 8,000, technically speaking, as far as like the combinations. That's not even a drop in the bucket of what we could have had. You know, just different moments, different times. There's all these different possible outcomes. I mean, I don't know what the calculation is like. How many different individuals can one man and one woman produce? How many different individuals? Like, I produce millions of seeds, sperm, right? And the woman produces hundreds of eggs in her lifetime, 12 a year approximately, some from the age of 13 or 14, right? 12 sometimes, some 11 sometimes, I don't know. Around puberty, right? So for like 50 years max, 12 a year, it's 500-600 eggs a woman produces. Somewhere in that range, times a million. 500-600 million. And I'm just throwing a million. I have no idea how many sperm combinations there are, how many unique seeds I can produce. How many children could one man and one woman potentially produce? But I only did 8, and most people do a lot less. You know what I mean? Just 2. You could have had millions of different other children. Maybe better than the ones you got. Isn't that a thought? Maybe worse, though. Maybe worse. There's among those children, there could be retarded children. There could be, and that's not necessarily worse, but it's like that's a retarded child. What about now? Say like someone who's born with that, are they not blessed of God? They're blessed of God because they exist. Some people wish they wouldn't exist. They don't like people who are disabled. They don't like to be reminded of their mortality. They don't like to be reminded of the frailty of life, that some people aren't as blessed as they are. They want to just look at the rich guy and be jealous of him. They don't want to look at people beneath them on the scale of blessing who haven't received something like intelligence. But intelligence is just one thing. It's overrated. You could still be blessed with a loving family and have no intelligence hardly at all. And you could be more blessed than someone who's the brainiest person in the world. There's a lot. Like I said, do we know how to count our blessings? Do we really know what they're worth? God is kind to people who are unthankful and to people who are evil. Not only we think in terms of disabilities, God thinks in terms of wicked and evil, unthankful, unholy, unrighteous. That's how men are in the eyes of God. They are unthankful and to evil. And he brings them into being. He gives them life. He makes it rain on the just and the unjust, as it is said in the scriptures. And since God is that way, we ought to be the same. He gives life to people who never thank him for it. He gives rain and riches on people who think only of themselves and who do evil with it. That's something to think about too. It's like God, and he does it knowing what they're going to be like. Be therefore merciful as your Father also is merciful. Then he goes into the judge not part, and it's kind of a little different. Along the similar lines of how he wants our outlook to be different. Not just a legalistic, letter of the law, do this, do that, do what's expected of you, do what you ought to do, but go beyond what you ought to do and do that which is unexpected. Do that which is, and like I said, in a sense, if someone does evil to you and you do good to them, you're flipping the script, because you're supposed to return spite for spite, evil for evil, stroke for stroke. You're not supposed to be like, because what it does is it makes their evil what you're doing retroactively, you're making them seem like worse people because they are so mean and cruel to such a kind and forgiving, merciful person. Because nobody likes that. If someone does something, like if someone, like, like, oh, a little old lady found, this drifter came to her house and he said he was hungry and she fed him and clothed him and gave him a bed and a job. And then after a couple of weeks, he murdered her and took all her money and, and everyone universally thinks, what an evil person. What a wicked person. And men universally pretty much love to see that person caught, punished. They want to see justice done. Well, how many people could someone who first starts off abusing them, then turn kindness to them? That is not so easy. Not so easy. But it is a higher level of, of godliness to be so. To show mercy as God is merciful. What thank have you? Remember, merciful. Let's see what the word merciful is right before we kick off here. I'm just curious. That's oiktimone, which we're not familiar with. Kind is Christos, which is similar to. So the unthankful is akaristos. Kind is Christos and merciful, and they all have similar meanings. It's like we have kindness, mercy, thankfulness, graciousness, and they all are connected to each other. They're all similar terms of like category. Of all belong in the same kind of pool of behaviors, of good behavior. Anyways, we'll pick it up in verse 37 to Monday. Until then, thanks for joining me in this study, and I'll look forward to being back again on Monday.
The bands of the wicked have robbed me, but I have not forgotten thy law. At midnight will I rise to give thanks unto thee because of thy righteous judgments, O Lord. I am a companion of all them that fear thee, and of them that keep thy precepts. The earth, O Lord, is full of thy mercy. Teach me thy statutes. Thou hast dealt well with thy servants.